Hello, welcome everyone to the Beacon of Light podcast tonight. We're thrilled to have you here with us. We have an amazing author tonight. Her name is Rebecka Vigus, and she has something really important to share with all of you, and it has to do with story. So I'm excited to have her say something about this tonight. But before we start talking to her, let's jump into this. I'm April Tribe Juke. Welcome to the Beacon of Light podcast. I believe we are all made with light, and light is hope. This podcast brings authors who write stories of hope to all of you. Your journey to be inspired and amplified by these stories starts now. We're back. Thank you all for popping in here live. And if you have questions for Rebecka, we would love to have you put them down and see what we can read and answer along your way. So, Rebecka, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, I've been writing since I was 10, so we're talking 60 years now. I have, I don't know, 17, 18 books. I've lost count at this point. But I decided, because I'm coaching writers, that I would take everything I picked up along the way and put it together in a book. And we have Let's Write Fiction, because I'm a fiction writer. So basically, every story I write, every book I write is just a story. I try to make my characters real, like someone you might run into on the street. They have flaws, they are not perfect. Find me someone who is. I can't deal with characters who do things that I consider stupid, like, there's something in the dark there and you walk out without a flashlight, or you don't let anybody know you're going out there. That's stupid. People do that. I've seen them, but it doesn't give credibility to your character. And your character's got to be credible, believable. There are things that they will do that are off the wall, but they're off the wall in context with who they are, if that makes any sense. I remember going to a conference and I had sent 5,000 words in ahead of time to have the publisher read them and give me feedback, which was probably the best thing I have ever done in my life. It was a whole $25. And when he got to the conference, he was running a little bit late. But when he finally got there, we talked and he said, I have one complaint with what you sent in. And I'm going, one? He said, you have her walking down the hallway in this school, and you tell me that I can hear the sound of her shoes echoing on this floors of this empty school. And you tell me that her hair's piled up on top of her head. And you even tell me what color it is. What the heck is she wearing? I completely didn't think about it. And, there goes my character. Is she tall? Is she short? Is she fat? Is she thin? And what's she dressed in?
It's really important that you can visualize who it is that we're talking about. And yeah, important. Good on some of those details. You just naked out there.
Yeah. Otherwise, and always give your characters a first and a last name. Unless, of course, you're writing aliens or fairies or little wood gnomes, wood elves. Yeah. They don't necessarily need last names. But humans have first and last names. I find it very difficult to engage in a book where there's just a first name. And I found this in a book that was highly recommended. I sent them to the library. I could not read them. There were two little girls in the book. They were about 12 or 13. And the first couple chapters introduces the first one, and I have her name. I know absolutely nothing about her. Is she tall? Is she short? Is she fat? Is she thin? Is her hair blonde, brunette, red, streaked? Are her eyes blue, brown? Does she have a face, a long face, an oval face, a heart-shaped face? Is her face deformed? I don't know this stuff if you don't tell me. And I can't relate to someone I can't picture. And I thought, well, it'll get better. And I hit chapter 3 and I get the next little girl, because eventually the two are going to meet. And it's the same thing. I have two ghosts because I don't know what they look like. All I have are their names. What I might consider the character from my imagination and what the author intended are not going to be the same. And it's not fair to the author. It's also not fair to the reader.
Very true, because you want the reader to enjoy the experience. And if the reader is frustrated or upset with not understanding or connecting, they're going to put the book down. Books don't cost a lot of money, but what they do cost is your time. And I've heard it said, many people who start reading a book, that was a waste of my time. So, even though the book is not that expensive, the real cost is the investment in time. And when you have a well-written character and plot and story, which we're going to get into whatever kind of a story, you want to fall in as a reader, kind of put your head up and like, I'm late for work because I was reading. Whoops. You want to fall in and not be wondering, wait, what is this? What? And trying to take, yeah, you want to fall into the story. So that leads me to my next question.
Okay.
Is how or what is a good way? I'm going to back that up. If you have in your life challenges, problems, trauma, if you have those experiences in your life, do you feel like that can add to your story? Would you become a better writer with those?
Yes, absolutely. And the reason for that is you can write fiction and put your trauma in there. It helps release some of what you're still holding from that trauma. And it's fiction. No one knows if it's real or not except you. It's very easy to hide trauma in a fiction book.
That's very true. That concept of where the character is going to go, what can they experience, what who the people they're going to meet, or the relationships that are going to fracture, that all comes from a place of deep pain or fear. And as a writer, if you can channel that into your character, that becomes really relatable. It becomes an understanding of how this is going to work. And again, another hook. So when the reader resurfaces an hour later, like, wow, where am I? I was falling into that story. It is very, very, very helpful.
Well, and the other thing is the books I write are what I call conversation starters. I have written about the effect of murder on a small town, and it's not just the immediate family that's affected, it's everybody. I've written about bullying to the point where kids are doing things illegal that are really going to get them tossed in jail if they don't stop. I've written about spousal abuse, child abuse. I've written about being caught up and almost sold into the sex slavery thing. And I've done it because I want people to talk about it and see if we can come up with solutions on how to stop. Bullying's not getting better. It's getting worse. You now have bullying in the workspace. Those who are threatened by people who are successful in their job tend to bully them, and that's never a good thing. And a lot of people are committing suicide because they can't take the regular job pressure plus the bullying from colleagues or administrators or managers or whomever. I mean, it's bad. And they're even looking at laws to stop workplace psychological bullying. Oh, you're right. Or stops. And it makes me sad when people are pushed to thinking suicide is the only answer.
It is such a terrible thing. And so when we're writing the fiction and falling into story, tell us what makes good story.
Just about anything can become a story. I read an article, one of those little 1 or 2 inch fillers in the newspaper when I was on vacation. And in a small town near where I was at, sheriff's deputies had gone to arrest a woman who had not shown up in court. It was a bench warrant they were going to serve and arrest her. They get to where she's living in her trailer, and they can't get over the number of flies around. Her car's there, she's not answering. So they radio in that they're going to force the door open and do a wellness check because it appears she's home. They open it up and there's this mass of flies that come out at them. So they also smell something funny and they put on bandanas over their face to go in, partly to keep the flies away. And they clear this trailer and they get to the second bedroom. The smell is worse, but they don't see her anywhere. One of them opens the closet door and they both leave immediately. She's been murdered. And they threw her in a closet and locked up the trailer and left. And me, the writer in me, because I was heading back home the next day, says, what was she supposed to be in court for? Who in the world wanted her dead? And did they ever solve it? I don't know the answers. It was a weekly paper, and I got it as it came out, so it was going to be another week, and I wasn't going to be there. But that in itself could start a story. I could give 10 people that same information and get 10 entirely different stories. So it's kind of what you're interested in, what you see, what you know, and then you take it and you run with it. Your mind will let you go. That's logical.
Yeah, there is something really interesting about having a story starter and then seeing what can happen. So as a writing coach and with this book, Let's Write Fiction, as you are coaching people, what is a comment that you can share with us from the book that you also coach with?
My one sentence that it's not even written in the book, but it's what I tell everybody who's interested in writing. I truly believe every single person has a story to tell of some kind, whether it's real, whether it's a memoir, whatever it is, everyone has a story to tell. I have put some flash fiction in here. This is the book. I have put some flash fiction in it that has come from my life. And one of them, and I'll do it briefly because I'm not going to read it. When I was 5.5, my brother was 2.5. And we were up north camping. My youngest sister at that time was about 9 months old and starting to walk. And my dad's youngest sister was with us, and she was about 15. I had gone over after breakfast to the playground, like through the campground, and no one really worried about kids over there. Well, back when I was a kid, bread came in waxed paper. You take the waxed paper from the bread wrapper when it's empty, and you tear it into parts, and you hand it to every kid in the park, and you run it up and down the slide. It was a metal slide. It was 10 feet tall. That makes it go faster for anybody who doesn't know. When Mom and Dad were getting ready to go into town, and Rosemary, my brother, came over and he wanted to go up the slide. So she told me to go up behind him, and I did. We get to the top, and he sits down, and he's terrified. And he says, "I'm scared." And so I let my aunt know. He says he's scared. And she says, "No problem," because she's down on the ground. She says, "Just give him a push, and I'll catch him." I'm 5.5. I gave him a push. I mean, we're talking. He flew, and he stiffened. So when he hit the ground, he broke his right leg in 2 places.
Whoa, that was quite a push.
It wasn't, but it was so fast on the slide that it was scary. We had a choice to take him to Traverse City, Michigan or Flint, Michigan for having it set right, because the little hospital up there wasn't really much more than an urgent care at that time. Now it's a full-fledged hospital. But we went to Flint because that's where we lived. So we stopped at the park. Dad told the rangers what was happening. He'd be back up in a couple of days, and he'd pack everything up. We weren't going to be there this year. So we drove home, and at that time, there was no expressway to that area. It was a 2-lane road. Every little bump for the 2 hours it took us to get back to Flint, my brother whimpered or cried, and I felt so bad. And I felt even worse because my aunt took the blame. I was the one that it was my fault. He's fully recovered. He fully recovered. They told my folks he might have to wear lifts because one leg might be shorter than the other. That didn't happen. As far as anybody knows, it was an accident. But the result of the accident was I was sick for 3 nights before they figured out why I was sick, and it was because it was my fault, and I had to take the blame. My dad explained to me it was an accident. Nobody was to blame. But it didn't feel that way.
So have you channeled some of those feelings deep within a character before?
Mm-hmm. And I actually wrote that story in a flash fiction piece. And read it for something. I don't remember what. Something to do with a narrative piece. But yeah, he's 6 foot tall. You know.
It didn't make him too short there.
No, we didn't.
Well, it's
We
good
didn't
that
do
you
much.
have a good response and a ending with that
Yeah.
story. And it is really interesting when we take the pieces of our lives and then put it into writing. When you hear about other writers who've written books that you just love, and you hear about maybe um places they visited or experiences they've had, you can kind of see little inklings possibly of that within the character or within the place, the setting, the plot lines. And what makes really good character and fiction writing is that relatability, right? And it can still be fantastical because the
Right.
setting, the place, all of that can be fun. And I do like your comment about not having dumb characters or doing dumb things. I think that's good. And so it's just something to think about. So hopefully you writers out there have put some of those things maybe in your back pocket, and non your nonfiction writers as well, because I'm here to tell you, I help a lot of you in your memoir writing and other things. You need to channel in and connect with how the reader is going to experience your story. And I think that's something that's really challenging, is that we might have a perspective on, well, this is how it happened. Oh, yes, okay. Now, how does the reader understand, accept, and experience what you experience? What seat, what driver's seat, what passenger seat, where are we placing them within this story so that they go, wow? Are we dropping them in the heat of a moment and then backing up? Are we slowly building to the point? What can you do? The story is the impact, and what is the message from that that's going to be really, really powerful. So, Rebecka, in your book, let's click it up here again. Let's write fiction. If someone were to pick this up, how would that help them in their writing?
I would hope it would give them enough to work with to actually have a finished novel if they choose at the end of it. One that they could actually submit to an agent or a small press or self-publish, whichever they want to go, whichever route you want to go. That's how I wrote it. I wrote it in a step-by-step manner that you need to do this, this, and this. There's an exercise where I actually tell you to take a notebook and go sit in your favorite coffee shop. Watch people. How are they interacting with each other? You don't have to listen to their conversation. You can tell from body language, facial expressions, what the mood is. If somebody's sad, if they're arguing, if they're really happy, if there might be a problem that needs to be solving and they're bouncing ideas off each other. I talk with my hands. They're going all the time. And so, if you don't watch people, when you go to write, he said, she said, he responded, she replied, those all get real boring. What were they doing when they said this? Were they
Really?
sitting there bored? Are they listening? You can tell. And that's part of getting your dialogue right. Big
So do you
part.
have a piece within the book that helps to expand out and share. I really personally like to expand a character through their dialogue. I feel like that is a really powerful and fast way to get to understand a character.
I tell
So,
them to put their main character or even a minor character in a different situation outside the book and just have them have a conversation with somebody.
give us an example.
I took a character, I can't remember which one. Oh, I did. I took in my I have a series, Macy McVannell series. And I started out, and the first 2 books are in first person. In the third book in the series, I switched to third person because I wanted a more rounded perspective on Macy. And so I had other people who knew her who were discussing different things about her related to the story. It wasn't just off and on, but it gave a more three-dimensional picture of who she is. And since she is the main character that goes through all of the novels, you kind of have to have a perspective on where she's coming from. You know, the fact that she doesn't say much about it, but her mom's in a nursing home with Alzheimer's. And, you know, that's a chore because she goes to visit mom and mom doesn't always know who she is. And I've lived that. I lived that with my grandmother. I got to the point where I wouldn't go visit because if she didn't know who I was, that upset her. If she did know who I was, she wanted me to take her home. And it's like, I couldn't do that. You know, I had a 4-year-old at home. I did not need a grandmother with Alzheimer's. Besides, I was working full time. So it just wasn't going to work. But it's hard. It's hard if you don't have a perspective and some background on who your person is.
Yeah, that's really important part. So, Rebecka, we're coming up to the end of this. So, where can we get your book?
Okay. All of them, the paperback, the ebook, and the hardcover are on Amazon. I believe they're all on Barnes and Noble. I know the paperback and the hardcover are. I can't say for sure on the ebook. They are on my website, which is running across the screen right there. Oh no, that's my email. My website is www.rebeckavigus.com, and they are on there. The ebook, I don't know if you have access to it from there or not. Used to send it to Amazon, so you'd actually be buying it from Amazon, but I'd still get paid for it. Not that that's a big deal. But it was easier than trying to host all the ebooks as well. That's like a whole different page.
Yeah, true. So that's a wonderful place to go. Go to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, to her website, www.rebeckavigus.com, and go ahead and grab a copy of Let's Write Fiction. And you've seen from experience and from the 2 to 3 stories that she shared with us here tonight, if you grab this book, you, by the end of it, should be able to write a full fiction story novel for yourself and leave a legacy there for others to read and for your family to enjoy, because there's something about a great story that really impacts all of us. We jump into fiction to learn more about ourselves, really. We think sometimes we're in the escape, and within that escape, we're actually maybe digging deep into something that could be our greatest fear, could be something that we've been working on in that subconscious for a while. And so fiction really has its place. It is just as important as any kind of a self-help book because it allows your mind to think of a different perspective, because we're now examining it through a character. And this character is pretty safe to examine through because it is fictional. And so those things are really fun to kind of point out. And I highly recommend, if you're going to write fiction, make sure that you consume a lot of it and understand, what made that story really touch you. What made that character just like, I want to just pick his toenails off. And just, you want to just jump in to story, to character, to understanding, so that you can have some kind of connection with other people. So, Rebecka, now we're coming to the close here. Is there anything that you would like to say about those of us who are writing fiction, and to keep encouraging us to keep going?
If you are writing, I hope you are writing every single day. You need to do that. I used to carry a little 3x5 pocket journal in my pants pocket or in my purse, somewhere where it was handy, so that if an idea came to me during the day, I could jot it down. Because teaching school and trying to remember things kind of don't work. It's easier to just jot it down when you've got it. I have scraps of paper with ideas that I came up with years ago that I have either discarded the idea or just shoved it in a shoebox and said, I need to think on that one some more. So always, always have something you can write on wherever you are. I keep a notebook next to my bed. I have been known to wake up about 3 o'clock in the morning and start writing because my brain had an idea. Not the best way to get good sleep, but it's a great way for ideas.
Wonderfully said. Thank you so much, Rebecka, and thank you so much for joining us live, all of you amazing people. We really appreciate it. And go out there and write yourself some fiction. Grab her book, Let's Write Fiction, and enjoy the evening. We will be back next week on a wonderful hope and light-filled Beacon of Light podcast. And we can't wait to see you again. Thanks, everybody. Bye, y'all.